This is going to be a pretty atypical video for me, but it's also a subject that is fairly close to my heart and affects close friends of mine, so I wanted to take a break from my usual Xeno content to take a minute to talk about this. If there's a series I enjoy almost as much as Xenoblade, it would have to be the Kiseki or Trails series. The series is fairly small and niche overall as far as minigames go, being developed by the company Falcom. As a huge fan of RPGs that have a heavy emphasis on story and character-driven narratives along with deep and interesting combat systems, it's been a consistently enjoyable and quality experience throughout the franchise, often offering long story experiences, a ton of good side content, and NPC dialogue that constantly changes everywhere as you progress through the game, giving many of the game some of the largest scripts ever for video games. In addition, each game builds upon the previous, with all 11, and soon to be 12, currently released games taking place in the same world and featuring many characters that are constantly relevant throughout the series. There is a lot of attention to detail in this series, and it's incredible how the series has managed to have great story arcs and games despite all taking place within about 6 years of each other throughout the same series. However, there's been a recent development regarding the current localization company for the game, NIS America, and fan translations for the series, and that is primarily what this video will be about, as I want to talk about the situation since I think it's a slap in the face to fans, and is a decision I would love to see somehow reversed. I also truly believe that it would be best to boycott the company for now, which I'll discuss a bit later in detail. This video will not be some kind of rage-hate video towards NIS America, and I'm well aware it may ultimately accomplish nothing, but if I can just bring some more awareness to the situation, maybe it can end up having some kind of positive result. Please do not harass any employees of the company either, as I do not condone that. To give a summary of the English history of the series, as well as the situation, for a long time the series was Japan only without any English publisher or localization company picking it up, but eventually it did get picked up and official translation came, which started giving the series some popularity in the West because of how easily accessible many of the games are, with many available on Steam, and the first few in particular able to run on basically any PC. Because of how niche the series is, and because of how long the scripts for these games are, translating these games can be a difficult process. It took a pretty long time for the English release schedule to get just 1 year behind the Japanese schedule, with Trails of Cold Steel releasing in late 2020. This is technically 2 years after the game released, but as Falcom made an East game instead of a Kiseki game in 2019, there was effectively only a 1 year gap, though the situation is a bit more complicated than that. Up until this point, fans have been translating the games before any official localizations came out in the West because the series was behind, and the more hardcore fans of the series were interested in playing these games early. Previous games in the series also got fan translations as well, such as the 2-game Crossbell arc that did not previously have English releases even still, and were skipped over. For these Crossbell games, there was a translation team that worked on it called the Geofront, a fan group named after a location within the games. These 2 games had previous fan translations, but the quality of the translations were not the greatest. These translations from Geofront ended up being created as a patch to apply to legally purchased copies of the game for PC. Every single line of dialogue was translated. For the more recent releases, where fans wanted to play the new games as soon as possible, there was a different translation group called Zerofield. Also fans who took a more simplistic approach, translating text from the story, side quests, and relevant NPCs only into an Excel spreadsheet on a line-by-line basis, so the translation would be done sooner for the hardcore English-speaking fans who wanted to play. There was also a separate combat sheet so you wouldn't be confused with gameplay. Zerofield never created patches for the games themselves, but they did eventually incorporate the use of a clever program that allows you to overlay the text from the spreadsheet on your screen as you played the game, advancing the text at the same time, allowing for a much smoother experience when playing, and once again you could easily play with a legal version of the game from Japan. The game itself was never directly modified, and everything was external, a clever solution to get around issues regarding fan patches, and something that worked with the PlayStation 4 releases of the games, which came out the earliest, and thus allowed English players to play and understand the games the soonest. As far as official localization, the series started out being localized by Xseed with the 3 Trails in the Sky games and Cold Steel 1 and 2. After Cold Steel 2, the series would be dropped from Xseed and eventually picked up by NIS America. The NISA and Falcom partnership didn't have the greatest beginnings, with Ys 8 notably having a lot of issues in the original English release both quality and translation-wise. Archaeozoic big hole anyone? NISA also suggested that Cold Steel 3, the first Kiseki game they would localize, was a great starting point for the series despite possibly being the worst starting point imaginable, but I suppose this is understandable since it's the first game that would make them money. A lot of fans of the series already had some animosity towards NISA for some of these things and localizations regarding other games outside of Falcom, but there wasn't really anything major. After Cold Steel 4 released in the West, fans were excited about the prospect of eventually being caught up soon. No official releases of the crossbell duology aside, since most of the community regarded the fan translation patches as being perfectly serviceable and easy to use. In June 2021, while waiting for an announcement of the localization of Hajimari no Kiseki, English title Trails into Reverie, there was a big announcement from NIS America stating that they had partnered with the Geofront fans translation group to officially bring the crossbell games to the West, with the Geofront translation being used as a basis for the game. People were happy that NISA reached out to fans and were willing to work with them. And at the same time, there was also an announcement for Hajimari and a spin-off title called Nayuta no Kiseki that would also be translated. While having the crossbell games officially localized is cool, the first of the two games, Trails from Zero, would not be released until September 2022, and at the time of this video, it is about a week away. Azure would not be released until spring, and Hajimari, or Reverie, would not be released until fall 2023, when its original release date was fall 2020. This brought a lot of confusion, as Zero and Azure should not take that long to localize if they already have a translation they could use, especially not when they haven't released a Kiseki game since October the year before in 2020. People were hoping for Reverie in late 2021, and now we would be getting a game most fans had already played over a year after that, and Reverie would not be coming until 2023. At the same time, Falcom has moved ahead with the series, releasing new Trails games in 2021 called Kuro no Kiseki, now a top 5 game for me by the way, with probably my favorite male character ever as the protagonist, and you should definitely play it if you can play the series, and is set to release Kuro no Kiseki 2 also roughly a week from now. The series in the West went from nearly caught up to 3 years behind again just like that. In many ways, this halted a lot of the momentum of the series in the West, especially with such a long gap between releases, and an even longer gap to finally get the new game everyone wanted. Meanwhile, the Zero Field fan translations continued, with the Kuro translation being completed earlier this year, allowing Western fans to play in English to be officially caught up. People weren't the happiest about NISA's falling behind, but as long as they were means to continue playing, then it wasn't really a huge deal. About 2 weeks ago, however, the Zero Field team got an email from NISA basically shutting down their fan translations, or at least scaring them enough to, since no member of the team really has the ability to financially fight a legal battle in court. When Zero Field publicized the issue on Twitter and revealed they had taken down all of their translations, this was met with a ton of backlash, as you can imagine. Fans are rightfully very upset. Here is just a quick excerpt from the full thread by Corey, who is a close friend of mine. Sorry for the silence since this started. We wanted to keep things quiet, but in a community this tight-knit, speculation is going to get out there. We've heard back, and NISA isn't willing to negotiate with us. They've clarified we have to take down all of the sheets from Zero to Kuro. Naturally, I'm bummed about the decision. I really wanted to keep translating these games. Working on the Kuro sheet is the most fun I've ever had in my whole life. Seeing it get out there was more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined. I've learned a ton about Japan and grown so much as a writer thanks to these projects. More importantly, I've gotten to work with an amazing team along the way. Hell, despite how this community can be, it's hard to express how happy I am for the support we've received at the end. This Saturday, Kog, Kitsune, and I were gonna stream with Fev and announce the Kuro 2 sheet. I've only ever been on 2 big translation projects, and it sucks to have this happen literally 2 days before we announce the third. You have no idea how excited I was. I'm not happy, I don't think this is entirely fair, but I can't afford lawyers, and I don't think I should end this by going scorched earth and giving a middle finger to everyone that's taken us this far. I'm gonna try to play things as close to the chest as possible. I think the Kuro arc is off to a great start, and I really want to see how it'll go from here. I was hoping for the team to be a part of that journey for everyone. Translating the dialogue in these games is such a blast. I'm really sorry to everyone that we can't. At the end of the day, I love translating. It'll be hard to find something else I love as much as Kiseki that's not already being translated, but I don't want my work to end here. Just wish I could have said goodbye to translating Kiseki in a grander way, at least finishing the arc. I'll end this by saying that I really do appreciate everyone's support. Seeing even just a few people enjoying stuff I translate means the world to me. If anyone sticks around, I hope you'll look forward to what I do next. For anyone that calls it here, it's been nice having you, and thank you for everything. At the time, I remember being very angry about the situation as well, publicizing my thoughts under tweets of the company and on my own Twitter. While I've been able to think about this more and about how to approach the situation, I still think this is an absolutely scummy move. It's speculated that the reason for this was a patch made for the PC releases of the games based on the spreadsheets that made it easier for people to just buy the Japanese version of the game and play in English, since the translation quality was already good and now people could just put the English text into the game. However, Zero Field did not make this patch. It was made without their consent, as once again Zero Field never did anything or created anything to directly modify the games. By shutting down Zero Field, NISA effectively killed the best way to play the unreleased Kiseki games in the West, of which there will be 3 once Kuro 2 launches in a week. This is made even worse by the fact that they haven't even announced that they plan to localize Kuro no Kiseki yet, so fans don't even know when they get to play this game or the second one. Fans of the series are passionate, and shutting down harmless fan translations is a step too far. People obviously want to play these games, and the fan translators should not be such a huge threat to the official localizers that they feel the need to shut it down. It also can effectively screw over people like myself who bought the game legally on PlayStation 4 from the Japanese shop, and now I can no longer even play it because I just can't patch my PlayStation 4 version of the game, and I also cannot speak Japanese. Essentially, I cannot play a game I bought legally because I cannot use the spreadsheet translation. I think this is an absolutely terrible move on the part of NISA as well. I assume the decision was made to try to get more money from people buying their officially localized releases, but all they've done is shatter goodwill with much of their fan base, and have tried to completely kill momentum of the series in the West. I've seen many sentiments of people thinking of dropping the series if they have to wait 4 years to play the second Corona Kiseki game, and have to manage to avoid spoilers for any newly released Kiseki games in that time period also for 3 to 4 years. Imagine having to avoid spoilers for Xenoblade games for 4 years. Sounds ridiculous, right? Would make it very difficult to properly be a fan of the series. I also think this was very stupid because the fans of the series that enjoy it enough to buy the Japanese versions of the games would likely be fine double dipping to support English releases and get any content missed from the spreadsheet. I know I was initially planning to buy Trails from Zero in a week since I do legitimately want the series to do well, but after this decision I cannot in good faith support a company that would spit in the face of its fans. This isn't an uncommon sentiment, as many who are planning to buy this release and other NISA releases are also sharing a similar sentiment. I made a tweet saying I hoped the game would flop, which probably was not the wording I should have used, and this ended up getting me a lot of comments from people who either still fully supported NISA and their decision with all of these stupid "they're a business, so of course they do this, they have to make money" arguments, or from those that were upset, but apparently not upset enough to not buy the game. So let me explain this point in a bit more detail. The argument is that if the game flops, the series will just fail in the West, as NISA will drop the series and no one else will be willing to pick it up. Because of that, we should all just grit our teeth and buy the releases anyway and give money to the company that is screwing over its fans. For one, the series is rapidly gaining popularity, so this almost certainly isn't true, and the series would very likely be picked up and localized by a different company. And secondly, and I mean this 100% genuinely, I would rather have only fan translations if this is the alternative. I can still support Falcom themselves legally and be caught up with the series without much additional effort. I think supporting a company after they spit in your face is never going to be the proper move, and I fully advocate boycotting NISA releases unless they reverse this decision. You can still play Trails from Zero in English while buying it legally even now without buying the NISA release. Another reason this is silly is that it doesn't stop the fact that the patches are already in circulation. Shutting down Zero Field doesn't stop people from using the patches uploaded everywhere else to play the games in English using their translation. All it does is stop them specifically from translating the next Kiseki game and any future ones. They are not going to gain anything from this, and will only lose sales as anyone who had already played in English will likely not double dip anymore, and anyone looking to play in English still has a readily available patch to use. This also won't stop people from translating the games. If anything, this will likely only make people choose to translate out of spite. Even if the quality will likely be worse than Zero Field, there will still be people translating. The series is popular enough and the fans are too dedicated, and the series is simply too far behind. Shutting down Zero Field doesn't do anything in the long run for stopping people from playing in English. All it does is shoot yourself in the foot and ruin goodwill fans had towards you. I'm even considering just using machine translation and messaging Japanese-speaking friends when something is too confusing myself, since the game comes out pretty soon and honestly I'm pretty excited and want to play it too. This move might make more sense and be more forgivable if NISA was close to being caught up, or actually caught up, but they are very far behind now and are taking an extremely long time to localize the games. Luxon made a spreadsheet showcasing some localization information that is very interesting, and showcased that being this far behind is bad as a fan of the series trying to avoid spoilers and for being caught up. You never know when the official Falcom Twitter is just going to post a spoiler because it was from 3 games ago. Now let's consider the fact that NISA partnered with Geofront, a fan translation group, to bring the Crossbell games to the West. Geofront, as we recall, actually did modify the games themselves, while Zero Field never did any modifications to the game. Not to mention, Geofront was also a fan group. This feels like even more of a slap in the face because NISA was willing to work with Geofront, but wasn't even willing to negotiate any with Zero Field. They even said in a stream about a week ago after this happened that one of their favorite parts of Zero was working with Geofront, and yet they shut down other translators, basically just rubbing salt in the wound. This chat message summarizes it better than I ever could. And of course it got ignored and the person got banned. Speaking of this stream, anyone who dared to bring up Kuro or Zero Field was instantly banned in chat, no matter if the message was respectful, or if it was a question during the Zoom call of the section of the stream after all the new announcements, and I myself was even banned in like 3 seconds too. Even people who just said they were excited for Kuro eventually got banned in the crossfire. So the response here was obviously to just ignore all the backlash and hope it all goes away, and everyone just forgets or gets less angry and buys their games anyway, otherwise known as the Nintendo approach. And despite all of this effort to ignore this, all of their tweets have steadily gotten many comments about the situation even still, and this culminated once again in a tweet a few days ago where someone on the European account decided to tweet this. As you can imagine, this did not go over well with the fan base at all, once again as they got a ton of quote retweets expressing anger and disappointment along with many replies, including a meme of Naked Von. And I mean a lot of replies. Despite all of this, there's been no official announcement or statement addressing any of this from NISA, and it really just feels like they're relying on fans to either forget, casual fans to just never hear of the situation, which is why awareness is good, or hardcore fans to just become less angry and support the releases anyway, or support out of fear of the series failing in the West, or something, which is still a ridiculous argument. Now, I personally would be very happy to buy Trails from Zero if they reverse their position on Zero Field and allow fan translation to remain up and continue being used. But as of right now, I will not be supporting the release and would heavily encourage others not to as well. That said, I do not encourage any harassment to anyone who does buy the game, as that is still their decision if they do buy it. I hope they enjoy it, it's a great game. There's been a bit of bad faith from the NISA supporting side saying the fanbase is terrible and pointing to examples of a couple bad parts of the fandom that are harassing and doxing employees, which you absolutely should not do. But all fandoms have stuff like that, there's always going to be some bad apples. As a whole, we all want the series to do well, and many would be happy to support localizers that actually like their fans. As a final point to make, once again, Zero Field did all of this for free just out of love and passion for the series. There was no intent to make a profit, no modding of the games, just trying to provide a way for the fans to enjoy the series. Just from a moral standpoint, it makes me sick to see all of the hard work going to waste, and the passion killed by a company that hasn't even announced they're localizing the game yet. Especially when they were planning to translate Kuro 2 as well, and were very excited to do it. I truly believe this will hurt NISA more than help them, as now fans will not want to double dip on releases, fans will spread information about them which will discourage people from buying their releases, which it should, and all around it just shatters a lot of goodwill of the fandom and makes it harder for new people to get into the series with it being so far behind and so difficult to avoid spoilers. I do not know what the legal basis for the decision is, and if they actually can stop people from just translating text legally and without making profit, but with no money to fight back it makes it difficult anyway, and apparently copyright laws are super broad. I truly hope NISA can be encouraged to reverse their position, and if there's anything I do recommend, it's sending a respectful email to them advising them against the move and mentioning how you will not support the company going forward if it is not reversed. And I also recommend actually boycotting the releases until it is reversed too. Voting with your wallet can absolutely be effective and will likely be far more effective when the community already isn't huge to begin with. Now, not every employee at NISA is responsible, obviously. It was most likely a decision made by executives, and hopefully those executives pay attention to social media or other employees can convince them it's a bad idea. And hopefully even one is watching this right now and has been convinced. Maybe this video accomplishes nothing at all, but just bringing more awareness to the situation is never a bad thing, and I am fortunate to be blessed with a platform that has a decent following. Maybe someone larger can pick it up and continue the trend. There's also other things I could mention about NISA, but that would be unrelated to the current situation, so I think that covers all the main points I want to make. Kiseki is a great series, and I do really want to see the series treated better by the company localizing it, or else I cannot in good conscience support them. And I also really do want to see it do well in the West. I am not hating or trying to get the series killed. I just believe the series does deserve better, and we should not accept this. It's a fantastic series, and I would love to see it do very well. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful and blessed day.